Hi Sloths, and welcome back to Unpopular Opinions, the show where I piss off the internet. Today I want to talk about forced multiplayer. I know it sounds pretty vague, but you should have a good understanding of what it is and why I've been pretty sick of it for years now by the end of the video. Yippee! When talking about multiplayer that is forced, I don't mean a game that is aimed towards a multiplayer experience, but rather games that are multiplayer only or have content locked behind multiplayer modes. Think about party games and how most of them tend to be multiplayer only experiences, or have minigames you can only play during multiplayer or co-op play. For some examples of multiplayer only games, there are things like Overwatch, Apex Legends, the Jackbox Party Pack, Dead by Daylight, and Rainbow Six Siege. In terms of games that have fun extra content locked behind multiplayer modes, we've got SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated that includes a cut boss fight from the original that most fans, including myself, were really excited for in the remake, but we only got it in a multiplayer mode where all you do is fight waves of enemies with friends. I've never played it myself, but I've heard it's incredibly disappointing. Although it barely counts, another seriously disappointing multiplayer mode I want to talk about real quick is from Doom Eternal. In the main campaign, there's this one really cool part of a level where you can control a revenant to fight a wave of demons. Not sure if this was done to promote the multiplayer mode or if it inspired it, but in the multiplayer mode, that's what you do. You control demons to fight against the Slayer. It's a 1v2 situation. Unfortunately, it was an incredibly unbalanced online-only mode that most players either skipped or were incredibly disappointed with, including myself. I bring this up because playing as a Revenant appears only once during the main campaign, and there's actually plenty of achievements, skins, and demons to play as that are locked behind this underwhelming multiplayer nonsense. I'm gonna level with you for a sec here. I used to hate multiplayer games for the simple reason that I used to never have anyone else to play with, and I didn't really feel comfortable joining like online lobbies with strangers. Now I'm a bit older and I've got a YouTube channel, I've made many long-lasting friends that I'm really grateful to be able to play games with and have fun with. I've enjoyed my time playing games like Phasmophobia, Repo, Lethal Company, and yes, I even recently tried Peak with my friends Emki and Nizetto, and I'm pleasantly surprised. Since around 2019 going into 2020 and beyond, I've personally noticed like a massive influx of online multiplayer experiences, which were made to combat the loneliness of the pandemic, and it helped a lot of people. People all over the world not only wanted these kinds of games anyway, but they actually really needed it. Animal Crossing New Horizons was one of the best sellers around this time, because people couldn't go and visit each other like they used to, and it's a fun but also bittersweet memory for many people. Over the years, multiplayer experiences have become much more common, even without there being a global pandemic, and the reason for that is simple. People want to play games with friends. Remember back when the Wii came out and everyone and their grandmothers were playing all sorts of casual games? Well, that kind of died out with the times, didn't it? Now with the increase of multiplayer games, it's given casual gamers the opportunity to play casual games with close friends and frequently, because games like Lethal Company, Repo, and Peak are easy to play, easy to understand. The general structure of the game is also addicting, to where you can have a few hours of a gaming session with your friends. Simply put, it's fun. Remember when games used to have random party or multiplayer modes? We're talking games like Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, Mario and Sonic at the London 2012 Olympic Games, Sonic and the Secret Rings, Battle for Bikini Bottom, Time Splitters 2? Yeah, back in the early 2000s and early 2010s, games were full of extra gameplay modes you can play with your family and friends. I remember playing all sorts of different gameplay modes in Worms 4 Mayhem when I was little, and who can forget about all the different party modes in WarioWare Smooth Moves? You can play these games for weeks after playing the main game because sometimes they're done really well and it's actually really fun to play. People are starting to want these kinds of extra modes to come back in single player games, but due to how expensive it is to make games these days, as well as how strict game development deadlines are getting these days as well, devs just don't have the time or the expense to be adding in these kinds of modes, which is unfortunate. But it was always nice seeing these things because it always adds something a bit extra and charming to an unassuming single player experience. In fact, I think it took me longer to finish all the side modes of Plants vs Zombies during my Let's Play than it did for me to beat the game the first time around.
Hello, I like money.
I'm not gonna lie to you, we all know that developers want your money, and it's no secret that there have been plenty of attempts to make cash grabs that take advantage of the rise of multiplayer and co-op games. Even free games can be shameless cash grabs when things like microtransactions and paid DLC are introduced. Whenever a game explodes in popularity, there will always be clones and rip-offs, and that sentiment continues and rises even more when it comes to the boom of co-op and multiplayer games. Look at the sheer amount of Lethal Company and Among Us clones out there. Now that games like Peak and Repo are so popular, we're now having clones of clones. Some are pretty impressive, such as a demo I played recently with my friends Emki and Niceto called Yap Yap, which is like a reverse repo where you use spells to destroy stuff to meet a quota, but the cool thing is you actually need to use your voice, like your real life voice, to create the spells. But there's also some of them that are pretty bad, like Screaming Chicken Ultimate Showdown, I think it was called, which was this strange shovelware title that Steam kind of like shadow dropped into people's Steam files, which was really suspicious. And I think it was meant to be like a clone of Fall Guys, but it was like so dead on arrival that shortly after they released it, they just shut down the servers because no one was playing the game. When I was little and I first got into Pokemon, I had no friends around me who liked the game, so I never got to trade until a lot later in my life. And some Pokemon I always wanted to use were locked behind trading. Machamp, Alakazam, Gengar, and many more. It was, for me, at least, a miserable experience. And it wasn't just this, but my friends at the time were only interested in playing games like Call of Duty and FIFA for some reason I still can't fathom. So even when I wanted to play multiplayer experiences where you can only play these modes with friends, like, I don't know, Time Splitters 2, where you can only play using certain weapons or characters in the deathmatch mode, I was always shot down. I already mentioned earlier my saltiness towards Doom Eternal and Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, but there's plenty more games out there that lock certain content behind multiplayer modes, like Portals 2 co-op levels, Dead Space 3's extra co-op missions, the entirety of GTA Online, and there's also some games that are so bad using NPCs that the only good way to play it is with friends, like Pokemon's raid battle mechanics. Achievements and in-game rewards being locked behind multiplayer or co-op is also frequent, which is one of the reasons why the new Skate remake has been so viciously attacked online. Locking content behind certain modes and not allowing people to experience this stuff on their own is very alienating for several reasons, such as personal preference, difficulty making friends, friends not having or enjoying the game, people with anxiety making it difficult to interact with either other friends that much, or online lobbies with strangers. For some games where you need a lot of players, it makes sense to have these online lobbies where you can play with strangers, but I'm kind of baffled at the inclusion of it in games like Repo and Lethal Company, where you also have an offline or single player mode as well as the option to play with friends. As someone with social anxiety, I can't really understand wanting to be in voice chat or interacting with complete strangers. How are you supposed to work together and trust each other off the bat like that? I don't understand it at all.
I'm a solo player, got it.
People have personal preferences, and that's perfectly fine. As for myself, I have always preferred single-player experiences, and I usually only really play multiplayer games if there is an option of either a single-player campaign or a mode that allows me to play a game without having to play with others. When it comes to games that focus on multiplayer, the single-player experience may still be there, but it's taken such a big backseat that it's either very difficult on your own or really poorly designed. One such game that I don't think I could have done alone at all was Escape the Backrooms. Not only did it play on my fears of arachnophobia and thalassophobia, but it's also incredibly difficult and frustrating to play on your own. Another game that comes to mind is the bland and unbalanced World of Light campaign in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, which just left me and many others disappointed. Even some multiplayer-focused games I like are quite fun to play on my own. In games like Lethal Company, I don't have to worry about my friends trying to troll me with annoying items, and it's also easier to deal with some of the enemies. In Repo, I don't have to worry about my incompetent friends breaking all the valuables or messing around so much that we end up taking forever or end up killing each other. Even when I've played MMOs or other online games, I generally tend to not join alliances or parties because I prefer to play alone and not need to deal with other people. But I think that's more on the lines of me having social anxiety issues, and dealing with people is pretty difficult for me most of the time. Yeah. It's also quite relaxing to just be on your own in some games, such as Minecraft or Peak, where you can just listen to your own music and enjoy some alone time inside of a world you can enjoy or can shape however you want to. I don't hate multiplayer games. When I was younger, I used to not like them or even flat out refuse to play them. But with the friends I have around me now, I think I finally understand what makes co-op and multiplayer so engaging. I do still prefer solo experiences in games, and I really wish that content wasn't locked behind multiplayer experiences. I hope that if any developers see this video and are looking to make a multiplayer or co-op focused game, they at least put a little more consideration and polish into a solo offline single player experience or campaign. I've seen a lot of people complaining about multiplayer killing single player games recently, and I can agree to that to an extent. But I think that if you take a second look, you'll find that a lot of games can and are still doing a good job of making a fun single player experience for both single player and multiplayer games. I know that there are a lot of people out there who still don't have friends, who are interested in the same games as you, or you might struggle to make friends. But my hope is that one day, you're able to experience the games you want to, with or without having to rely on other people. With all that being said, please like and subscribe, it's always free, and I'll see you later.